Hi, hello. This is YouTube librarian on Patreon, and I'm working with Jacques Derrida's Perjury and Pardon, Volume 1. I'm on, I'm kind of working one paragraph or two at a time, and I shouldn't even be thinking in terms of paragraphs. This is from a first session. Uh, what makes this text interesting is that these were actual lectures by Jacques Derrida, and this particular lecture was delivered on November 12, 1997. So this is from a lecture, November 12, 1997. And it starts actually just as interesting as most of Jacques Derrida's lectures with pardon, yes, sorry, pardon. Very interesting opening. But for scholars, I'm not necessarily in the first session. Well, I am on page 9. I'm in, from a scholarship point of view, I'm working with subsection 36 on page 9. Because we're really going to be working with this one or two paragraphs. And when I take a look at this paragraph, it is quite substantial. And so I don't know what to do, because it would be section 36 and 37, but it would technically be two paragraphs. So I don't know if I was just supposed to work with section 36 and not 37 of the first session. This has 2022 copyright, so it's hot off the presses, so to speak. We are being told that these were first originally delivered in French. But he repeated them when he was Distinguished Professor of Philosophy, French, and Comparative Literature at the University of California, Irvine in 1998 and 1999. So these 10 sessions were the first year of the seminar. So you can imagine that it's a $5,500 class at the University of Chicago, or a $2,700 class at through the Master of Liberal Arts program. I was accepted into both the Master of Arts program in the Humanities at the University of Chicago and the Master of Liberal Arts program at the University of Chicago. For 11 sessions, you go in debt between $5,000 and $3,000, $6,000 to $3,000. It may be over $3,000 now for the Master of Liberal Arts program, and it may be close to $6,000 the Master of Arts program in the Humanities. So you're looking at 11 sessions for between $3,000 to $6,000. I had a chance to, for example, take a course with David Bevington through the Master of Liberal Arts program, but I passed it up. And I studied academic and professional writing for 1 year at the University of Chicago. I still have a transcript to prove it. And I studied Introduction to Manuscript Editing at the Graham School. And I also took what I actually call a seminar. Now, these are called seminars, but I actually took what I thought was a seminar through the basic program of liberal arts education, and class was divided up into two classes, taught by two different teachers, lasting 2.5 hours. And one of the teachers was the director of the program, and the other went on to teach another course through an online program. I'm almost sure I took advantage of another course with him. So I'm more likely to continue on at 550 a course than I am at 2700. But I didn't have the right exact strategy. Yes, I could have studied with Tom Gunning, international cinema. Or yes, I could have continued writing about George Bataille's Derrida. In fact, Patrick French from King's College London was willing to consider me for a graduate program on the basis of 3 dissertation titles I proposed, but I didn't think that was necessarily a good idea either. And more importantly, I didn't know French. I don't know French. I'm studying Jacques Derrida, and I don't know French, and that would be considered a serious problem. Even the Committee on Social Thought at the University of Chicago said, I'm sorry, Michael, without French and German, you're not going to do well here. I did some research into the job market. There are over 3,000 jobs at Dugois, a construction company in France, and over 3,000 jobs at a grocery store in Germany. So the German and French people need some serious academic help if those French guys couldn't make it to a job at a construction company, and those German gals couldn't make it to a job at a grocery store. I did research with the International Directory of Company History. I was very surprised that there were over 3,000 openings at a construction company and over 3,000 job openings at a grocery store in Germany. And so that's probably why the professor of the Committee on Social Thought said I won't have a chance without knowing French and German. The French and German people need some serious help if they couldn't make it to a construction company or a grocery store to get a job. But this is very valuable material. And to some extent, it's a dream come true, because I might have wanted to really study, continue my studies, and I don't know if I would have had exactly the right approach. I see Jacques Derrida as someone who is operating from within the great books tradition, from within the liberal arts tradition, and to some extent I have a chance to review whether or not that was a good education, whether that education should be preserved, continued, reproduced, as Althusser, his mentor, advised in his famous book, Text. Was it a course on general linguistics? But yeah, we're working with Jacques Derrida. I will be honest with you, I read his most famous essay, In the Margins of Philosophy, and then I purchased a bunch of his books, from Of Grammatology to Husserl's On the Origin of Geometry. So I can't actually say that I did study Jacques Derrida after being introduced to the notion of difference. But I am. I'm working with Jacques Derrida. I'm working with Jacques Derrida through Patreon, and also through virtual reality, through a virtual reality platform called Engage. So if you own an HTC Vive Flow, MetaQuest 2, or Pico 4, you could study with me on through an application called Engage. And if you're willing to pay $6, you could study with me on Patreon at this time. We're studying together. I'm using a technique which would be called oral literacy. I'm singing the text, but I'm constantly revising my technique. So right now I decided to work paragraph by paragraph, using Bolero as an inspiration, in which I go back to the beginning of the paragraph so that there's a better chance of understanding the material. I may switch from singing to reading out loud the text to see if a change in my voice makes a difference. I believe there are two major audiences for Jacques Derrida. A recreational reading, an recreational crowd, which is the top 10% of education attainment, the graduate school graduates, and the rest of the world, especially college students who are studying Jacques Derrida. So to me, there's only two readers of Jacques Derrida. The ones who are being entertained by a public intellectual because they're part of the top 10% for educational attainment, and the 30% of the world's population that goes to college and would study Jacques Derrida. I don't see him necessarily as a primary school experience for our kids. So if you're wondering, is this appropriate for our 2 billion children? No, not necessarily. It's for the 30% who went on to college to study, and for the top 10% educational attainment, so they could enjoy the fruits of their academic labor as a recreational experience. So no, I do not see this as being appropriate for our 2 billion children. Yes, I do think that you can study this as one of the 30% who went on to college, and more importantly, if you're in the top 10% of educational attainment with a graduate degree, you should be able to enjoy my singing of Jacques Derrida. Enjoy it as a recreational experience. And to be honest with you, Margins of Philosophy may in fact have been a recreational reading experience for the top 10% educational attainment. But nobody would know it because they were probably introduced to it in college and they were suffering and struggling with it. On what basis can you say that, YouTube librarian on Patreon? Our entire educational system is predicated on there being educational stages of learning and development. So if I were to say to you, you're going to enjoy this as a graduate of graduate school in the top 10% of educational attainment, it just means that from a formative development point of view, your brain isn't necessarily ready to enjoy Jacques Derrida until you graduated from with an MBA, a law school, medical school, MSN in nursing. That was the whole idea of educational psychology. I studied it, of course, as well. So I'm working with Jacques Derrida, and that's what I believe. I believe that this is not for our 2 billion children. This should be studied by college students and enjoyed by the top 10% in educational attainment. But I'm considering shifting over to a new approach inspired by Bolero. And that means in these particular lectures, published in 2022, very recently, by the University of Chicago Press. I'm so grateful yet again for the University of Chicago doing their job properly on some point or another. Let's go ahead and work with 16. This will, in fact, this was a long lecture already, but a presentation. I don't want it to necessarily be too long. But let's take a look at. We're on page 9, section 36. This little book by Jacques that came out after forgiveness entitled The Imprescriptible. As a typograph these lines from L.U.R. which makes the paradoxical into my mind. Usefully provocative point of opposing salvation, but salvation on earth, then forgiveness. Now what's that? There is no salvation on earth as long as one can't forgive executioners. Inasmuch as it almost always happens out in a non-fortuitous way that one associates, we will often return to this expiation, salvation, redemption, and reconciliation with forgiveness. These words at least have the merits of breaking with common sense, which is also that of the greatest religious and spiritual traditions of forgiveness. The Judaico-Christian traditions, for example, which never remove forgiveness from the horizon of reconciliation, hope for redemption and salvation through a vow of remorse or repentance, sacrifice and expiation. The little book by Jacques came out after forgiveness, entitled Imprescriptible, has as its epigraph these lines from L.U.R., which make the paradoxical and, to my mind, usefully provocative point of opposing salvation, about salvation on earth and forgiveness. L.U.R. says, there is no salvation on earth as long as one can forgive executioners. Inasmuch as it almost always happens, and in a not fortuitous way that one associates, we will often return to this expiation, salvation, redemption, and reconciliation with forgiveness. These words at least have the merit of breaking with common sense, which is also that of the greatest religious and spiritual tradition of forgiveness, the Judaic or Christian traditions, for example, which never remove forgiveness from the horizon of reconciliation, hope for redemption and salvation through a vow, remorse, or repentance, sacrifice, and expiation. By Jacques that came out after forgiveness, entitled and imprescriptible, as at a epigraph these lines from L.U.R., which make the paradoxical them to mind, usefully provocative point of opposing salvation, but salvation on earth and forgiveness. L.U.R. says, there is no salvation on earth as long as one can forgive executioners. Jacques quotes these lines from L.U.R. as the epigraph to the first part, Pardoner, of his El Imprescriptible, Paris, Sewell, 1986, republished in the collection Points Essays in 1986, Roman numeral 2. Derrida's emphasis, L.U.R.'s poem reads as follows: there is no stone more precious than the desire to avenge an innocent. There is no sky more brilliant than the morning when traitors succumb. There is no salvation on earth as long as one can forgive executioners. Les Vendeurs d'Indulgence, ou Rendez-vous à l'Amende, Paris, Menu, 1945, 47, my translation, D.W. Dans les bombes by Jacques. I came out after forgiveness and tied on the prescriptable as at the top of these lines from now you born, which make the paradoxical down to mind, usefully provocative, point of opposing salvation, but salvation on earth, then forgiveness. All you answers, there is no salvation on earth as long as one can forgive executioners. And as much as it almost always happens, and in a non-fortuitous way, then one associates, we will often return to this expiation, salvation, redemption, and reconciliation with forgiveness. These words at least have the merit of breaking with common sense, which is also that of the greatest religious and spiritual traditions of forgiveness. The Judaic or Christian traditions, for example, which never remove forgiveness from the horizon of reconciliation, of redemption and salvation, through a vow, remorse, or repentance, sacrifice and expiation, and imprescriptible, starting from the forward to the text in title, pardon, to forgive, a forward the dates from 1971. Jacques, in fact, himself gives in without saying it, in these terms to a kind of repentance, since he admits that this text seems to contradict what he had written 4 years earlier in the 1967 book Forgiveness. Translator's note: pardoners, translated as Vladimir Jankelevich, Should We Pardon Them, translated Ann Hobart. Critical Inquiry, 22, 1996, 552-72. Further references will appear within parentheses in text, in the order English, French preceded where necessary by the mention. Pardon them, the translation is often modified. I don't know if you've read Critical Inquiry, but it's one of my favorite academic journals. So I might actually look for this article by Vladimir Jankelevich because it's published by Critical Inquiry. we're in section 36 on page 9. And, well, we're still in the middle of the paragraph. Now Jacques makes clear in the bottom of purely philosophical work that now published elsewhere. The answer to the question must be pardoned. Seems to contradict the one given here between the absolute of the law of love and the absolute of vicious liberty. There is a tear that cannot be entirely picked up on. Recosu, does he mean recosu, reason? Nice knowing how to pick up on a tear already be a way of conceiving of it as faulty stitching of previous sewing. There is therefore open to a certain resewing to being received on something John Kelovich contests here. I have not attempted to reconcile the irrationality of evil with the omnipotence of love. Forgiveness is as strong as evil, but evil is as strong as forgiveness. Pardon them, 553, imprescriptible, 1455. Naturally, these are statements and a logic that we have barely begun to debate, with which we are just beginning to struggle. Nonetheless, the text of the imprescriptible, participating as they do in the debate, know the imprescriptibility that I have just evoked, and to which we will return. Firmly conclude with the impossibility and inopportuneness, indeed the immorality of forgiveness, and in order to do so, in this polemical and impassioned debate, they produce a continuity of meanings that we most rigorously disassociate, and which moreover John Kelovich himself disassociates what he calls his purely philosophical work, namely, for example, forgiveness, prescribed limitation, and forgetting. Should we pardon them? Begin with this question: is it time to forgive, or at least to forget? 553:17, John Kelovich well knows that forgiving is not forgetting, but in a spirit of a broad polemical demonstration and an abject fear of the risk of a forgiveness that would end up engendering of forgetting. John Kelovich says no to forgiveness by contending that one must not forget. He speaks to us in short of a duty of non-forgiveness in the name of the victims. Forgiveness is impossible, and it must not be done. One must not forgive. One is required not to forgive. We will have to ask ourselves again and again what this impossible might mean, and whether the possibility of forgiveness, if there be such a thing, is not to be measured precisely against the ordeal of the impossible. Impossible, John Kelovich tells us in true forgiveness for what happened in the death camps is impossible. Forgiveness, says John Kelovich, died in the death camps, 567. 15.